Okay, so who in our audience is new to TCI? A lot of people. Well, let me tell you a little bit about this terrific organization. The Commonwealth Institute serves a unique role in our community by connecting business leaders to one another, providing networking opportunities and access to women CEOs and senior executives throughout our three-county area. The cornerstone of our mission is peer mentoring, and we do this in three main ways. First, through our executive forums, which help women during critical stages of business growth. Second, by providing educational opportunities and resources through our programming. And third, through events like today's luncheon. For those of you who are not familiar with our executive forums, they are small groups of 8 to 10 women business leaders who meet monthly in a confidential, professionally facilitated environment. We offer each other a safe space to discuss our challenges and get the advice and support that we need to keep growing our businesses. In addition to the executive forums, we launched 2 specialized forums last year. The Accelerated Growth Forum, or AGF, facilitated by Stephanie Sylvester and Barbara Schrutt. It's a 10-month program designed to help stage 1 businesses become stable and scalable. And we have a nonprofit forum facilitated by Gail Carson, who I just met today, and it offers a curriculum focused on the unique needs of this group of leaders. If you're interested in learning more about any of these targeted programs, please see me or one of our staff. This year, TCI South Florida launched its second Strategies for Success Leadership Training Program, featuring nationally recognized speakers and guest appearances from local top executives. This program takes place across 4 days between January and March every year. The 21 participants this year came from many of our great community organizations, such as Ryder Corp, Baptist Health Systems, Spirit Air, Kaufman Rawson, and more. The reviews are in, and I'm happy to tell you that all of the participants gave us a 2 thumbs up, second year in a row. A special thanks to our co-chairs, Linda Alexander and Amparo Barred, and their hardworking committee who put together this top-notch program, which is directed towards high-potential women executives who want to develop skills and framework to rise in their organizations. Now on to today's festivities. Today wouldn't be possible without our generous sponsors and board members who we rely upon to make this event a success. For this year's luncheon, I'd like to recognize Janet Altman and Kaufman Rawson. Thank you, Janet. Our program sponsor, Wells Fargo, and our contributors, CBRE and the Miller Family Foundation. Thank you all. I'd also like to recognize the contributions of our hardworking board. You have made the work of our staff and executive committee easy, and I would like to personally thank each of you for the support you have given me during my first year as president of TCI South Florida. Would all of our board members please stand up? Really quickly. Thank you. I would like to acknowledge our sponsors. Thank you for your part in supporting women-led businesses in South Florida. We couldn't have this special event today if it weren't for all of you. Our sponsors are listed in the program and also are scrolling on the screen. Maybe not yet, but they will. Let's give all of our sponsors and auction donors a round of applause, please. And I would be remiss not to mention the TCI team, Executive Director Lori K. Davis, and Program and Membership Manager Katie Doyle, who work tirelessly on behalf of this organization and make this and all of our events run smoothly. Thank you so much for your hard work. I'd now like to take a couple of minutes to tell you about an exciting opportunity. As many of you know, nonprofit organizations rarely have funds available for leadership and professional development. Budgets typically are heavily weighted to programmatic and general operating needs. Leadership training is a luxury for nonprofits, especially the ones that need it the most. Just like a for-profit company, a nonprofit is more likely to survive and thrive with a strong leader at its helm. An anonymous donor has presented TCI South Florida with a $50,000 challenge grant to grow our nonprofit scholarship fund. It's great. She wants to ensure that nonprofit women leaders have the same opportunities to participate in our programs as for-profit women. Through the Nonprofit Scholarship Fund, TCI has already supported dozens of South Florida nonprofits by providing access to our Nonprofit CEO Forum and our Emerging Leadership Program. We helped over 20 executive directors through the Scholarship Fund through 2014, and our goal is to double or triple that number in 2015 and beyond. To give you a sense of the impact this access can provide, I'd like to share a brief video clip of one of our scholarship recipients.
I didn't even see myself the way I see myself today. Like before I came to this program, what's so incredibly amazing is that I feel good about myself now. The fear went away.
That's awesome.
And I'm able to do the things that people say, oh yeah, you can do it. I believe I can do it now. And I'm actually, oh, what's the worst can happen? If I mess up, it's just an opportunity to begin again, right?
Yep, there you go.
Hi, my name is Audra Wright. I work for Miami-Dade County Public Schools as the Nutrition Wellness Coordinator. This has been, like I said, I can't say it enough, it's been life-changing. And if I had to recommend this program to anyone, I definitely would do so because I know we all could grow and learn from exceptional women that have made their mark in society to empower, because it takes a village and it's not just a cliche. And I'm so thankful and grateful that you're doing this.
So to date, we have received commitments of $29,000 towards the $50,000 challenge. So we have $21,000 to go. I hope you will join the challenge along with the list of donors to date that is supposedly scrolling on the screen. Please go to our website, www.commonwealthinstitute.org, and click on the Donate Now button on the homepage. You can do this on your cell phone. There are also cards on the tables for those who are not so technologically savvy. Please help us get to the finish line on this important challenge. Now let's move on to today's program. I'd like to introduce Doris Neira, Wealth Advisor and Senior Vice President at Wells Fargo Bank, who will introduce the program for today.
Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for being here today. I've had the privilege to serve on the board for the past year, and I'm very excited and proud to be a part of this organization. Wells Fargo has really a rich history of working with women business owners, and we're truly committed to the communities that we serve in. So we're in particular happy to be here today and to be able to sponsor this event. So I hope you enjoy it. And without further ado, I would like to ask Janet Altman, our moderator, to join us on the stage. Janet is Principal and Marketing Director at Kaufman Rawson, our research sponsor, so thank you for that. And Janet has been with the firm since 2000 and leads all aspects of their marketing efforts. I would also like to welcome our panel of exceptional women who we're here to honor today. So let's start with Ginger Martin, President and CEO of the American National Bank. Thank you for being here today. Kuki Salazar, President of Private Jet Services for Latin America, Europe, Middle East, and Asia. And then I'd also like to welcome Jillian Thomas, President and CEO of the Frost Museum. And last but not least, Alex Vlach, publisher of Miami Herald. Thank you. Janet, the podium is all yours.
Thank you very much. Good morning. Good afternoon. Let's see. Can we get the slides on the screen, please? There we are. I did some research before we did the survey and as we were doing it, and I learned some things that I thought were not amazing, but really impressive. Women-owned businesses in America are an economic engine that maybe people don't know about, maybe they don't think about, because there are 9.1 million women-owned businesses in America. They employ 7.9 million workers. They deliver 1.4 trillion in revenue. Pretty impressive, right? And that's what you all are part of. So let's get a little closer to home, right? The state of Florida has 564,000 women-owned businesses. That makes us 4th in the nation for the state. And even closer to home, Miami is 4th in metro areas with 242,600 women-owned businesses, right? Wow. So, as we did our research, we learned more about the businesses in Florida. And these are some of the women who completed our survey who are on our top 50 list of top women-led businesses in the state of Florida and top 10 women-led not-for-profit businesses. Now, all the data from the survey is in this booklet, which is at your seats, so you can take a look at it. And the lists are in here, and there are links at the top of the list, so you can go in and look at more information about all these businesses. I'm going to give you a few highlights now, but I know what we're really interested in getting to is the panel, so I won't go through all the charts and graphs, but I'll show you a few of the things that I was pretty impressed with. So, Florida's leading women are strong. Why do I say that? I say that because most of the women who answered our survey, and about 350 women answered our survey, we surveyed about 5,000 women. About 350 women answered our survey, and most of them started the business they lead. They didn't inherit it from a family member, they didn't work their way up, some did, but most of them started their own businesses. And the number one source of financing, their savings. So these are women who decided to start a business, figured out how to do it, and have grown into part of this great economic engine. These women say they've seen growth in the past year, but even more impressive, they project growth in the coming year. 85% of these 350 women who completed the survey, 344 actually, believe that their business will grow in 2015. That's pretty impressive to me. They're in all fields. Yes, we have a lot in professional services who answered the survey, and I think we have a lot of professional services women here today. But there were women in construction, there are women in manufacturing and distribution, there are women all across the board of the industries that we have here in Florida, which I found quite interesting, not surprising, given the clients that we see at our firm, but really interesting that these women are leading these businesses. Now, most of the respondents believe that women lead differently than men. And I think our panel is going to talk about that a little bit in a moment. But there wasn't an overwhelming response that women lead better than men, or that men lead better than women, which I would not have expected. But most believe differently, different kinds of leadership, and I'll be interested to hear our panel talk about that in a little bit. A lot of women who run these businesses credit on-the-job training, nice, right, and their personal networks for their success. Who in here has a personal network? Wait, this is our personal network, right? All of you, the people at your tables, the people you met right out there at the silent auction, this is your personal network, and many of you, in answering the survey, credited that network as being one of the factors in your success. And one of the sections that was a lot of fun for us to analyze, look at, read, pull apart, were the comments that people made when we asked them, what would you say to ambitious young women today who are in the position that you might have been in 10 years ago or more when you started your business? So let's ask our panel. Some of these questions and go a little bit deeper with them and see what they think about some of these ideas.
Excuse me, we need to interrupt the program for just a moment. Somebody left their car parked with the valet and took their keys. We're looking for the owner of a silver Infiniti. And here's the ticket number 537-927. Please return the keys to the valet. Thank you.
Okay. Am I on? So let's return to the program. So let's return to the program. Can you hear me now? No. It says on. There is a green light. Now there's a red light. Does the red light mean on? Is it on now? All right. So, now that we've gotten all our parking taken care of, and now that I've figured out how to work the technology, we have a great panel here today, and I'm going to be delighted to hear what they have to say about some of these questions. So let's start with a simple one. Let's go back a little bit in time, and I'm going to ask Cookie to start with this one. Were you in leadership roles when you were in school, when you were younger? And what did you learn from those roles that you've taken forward in your leadership journey?
So believe it or not, I was not necessarily the captain of the cheerleaders. What I was pep rally queen. I riled everybody in school up to the pep rallies and was the welcome committee freshman, of course. I do have a soft heart. What I learned in school is a basis of being a self-respect would be one. Secondly, I definitely learned to be to have sportsmanship, to be able to play in the same box with all my other colleagues, whether it was soccer, I was in soccer, swimming, track, you name it. And you definitely learn your social skills. And I think that was the basis in school for me, other than having a great time at the pep rallies.
Excellent. I'd like to ask a few of you others to talk about the leadership roles you were in early. Alex, can you tell us about some leadership roles that you had early in your life or in your career?
I think sort of like Cookie. Back in high school or whatever, I wasn't one of these joiners in terms of clubs or whatever, but I was very much involved in sports, in team sports, which I think gives women an opportunity to work together in a very effective way, and you're doing something as a team, and sometimes you're leading, sometimes you're not. In college, it was more about what project. I'm more about a project driven. If there's something or a cause, things that I'm very passionate about, I just dive in and get involved in. And those are opportunities for leadership, not necessarily in more of a structured, of a club type of scenario.
So I'd like to hear someone tell a story about a recent challenge, because I think that the things that we learn early, we bring into our careers later on in these leadership journeys that we talk about. And I think that there's something to be said for how we handle challenges. And I guess I'd like Jillian to take this one first. Tell us about a recent challenge you've had, what it was, how you handled it, and maybe what you learned from it.
Well, you definitely never stop learning whenever you're trying to tackle a challenge. So I'm currently trying to complete a really big building project for the new Science Museum while still running the existing Science Museum, which is really, really loved in the community. So it's got this big track record of people that love it and think it's doing a good job. And we're trying to kind of keep that feeling for the lovely old museum, but translate it into a resource that will be wonderful for the next 50 years. And we have some staff members who've been there a long time too, and who really love the existing museum. And I think it's always a challenge to take people with you and to help them envisage a different role in the future and see how they can fit into that big picture going forward when you don't actually know what necessarily the totality of that big picture is. So I think trying to help people adapt to change is a really big challenge, and I wouldn't say I've got to the end of it. And actually, working on projects, sometimes I just fail, and there's some people that can't adapt to change, and they tend to fade away and leave. But I do think it's really, really important to give people a sense of optimism about risk-taking and about the future, and want to buy into that as they move along. But I'm a very mission-driven person, so I kind of really, really want to do this, and I'll sacrifice quite a lot to get there. And I also have to recognize that that's not necessarily the motivation of everybody, and be really cognizant of what people want to get out of their job, where they want to go to, and see how where you want to go to can really help them get to where they're going as well. So for me, it's about listening to people and trying to move everybody in the direction that you want them to go. And the more people you have, the bigger the project, the more of a challenge it is to get everybody going in the same direction.
Great. So I'm gonna move to Ginger on a similar question, jumping off what Jillian said, because I know that as the leader of a community bank, you deal with change quite frequently. There's change in regulation, there's change in what people expect of a bank, and you have some pretty strong ways of motivating and inspiring your team. And I'd like to hear a little bit about that.
Okay, the world of community banking has been very interesting, especially since we went through this, recession. South Florida as a whole lost 105 banks during the recession, which is just shocking. So I have to tell you, at American National, we are very happy to be a survivor. And really, regulatory change has been the thing that has really caused us a lot of pressure, a lot of expense. But one thing that we've done that I really contribute to our surviving is our culture. Because we have a very defined culture. We have a very clear vision, very clear values. I can tell you that all of my employees can quote those values, and because we say that they're not just words, they are really the way that we are determined to show up in the world. And we really, it comes back to that kind of that mindset, to that attitude of we're going to figure out how to make things happen instead of really wondering what happens. So our culture is very clear, very strong. We hire by it. We free up people's future if they don't really kind of align with that culture. And it has been the thing that's really set us apart, because banking is really a commodity if you think about it. And so it's like, how are we going to be different in that culture? And one thing we've been doing, some people can't hardly believe this, but for over 6 years, we have a morning huddle. Every single morning, all the employees, it's mandatory, and we just do something inspirational to set the tone for the day.
I think that's great, and I always love hearing about what people are doing culturally in different companies, and I think it differs based on the kind of company that you are. And I wanted to ask Alex to talk to us a little bit about being a leader in public companies and how that affects how you manage culture. And is it different, and how is it different, and what do you do?
I think for the Miami Herald, it's a rather unique situation. We are a publicly traded company. We have external shareholders. We have to operate in a certain way, and we have, an ownership group that owns us out of California. So that certainly drives how you go through your budgeting process and so on. I think what's unique about us and our culture, and what drives us every day, is that while we are a for-profit business, we have a commitment, a very deep commitment to our community about public service journalism and what that means. And for us in our community, in times of huge transformational changes about how we go about our business model, it is about connecting at every level of the organization, regardless of what job you do, bringing everybody back to that mission. And we know that what we do makes a difference, and the journalism that we do saves lives, transforms and holds our government accountable. And that brings us back to every single day, regardless of if you work in the press room or you're in advertising or you're closer to it in the newsrooms, that is really what drives us and propels us to keep looking for how do we continue to transition our company. But I do agree, in times of great change, it is about over-communicating to make sure that everybody understands the culture, the values, and we stay true to it no matter what the changes around us are.
I'm going to continue on culture just for one more moment, and I'd like to hear from Koki about how the international piece of what she does affects the culture, because she leads an international initiative for private jets, and I think there's something different about that, right?
Absolutely. Let's begin with the fact that there's 194 countries, and each country has anywhere from 10 to 20 different cultures. So anywhere you go around the world, the way you say things, something that's totally normal for our day-to-day, is not as acceptable on the other side of the world, showing the palm of our hands, showing the bottom of our feet. So the most important thing when you're traveling around the world is understanding the cultures that exist and respecting them. And so I encourage you to get to know your US ambassadors around the world and a lot of the embassies that can guide you to the rules and regulations if you're not web savvy. And you can, obviously go on travel.com and hear a bunch of different things that just you and I would not necessarily give any importance to on a day-to-day basis. I would say that would be the principle of starting any business international is obviously you want to know your culture and what you do and how you do it and how you stand out from all competition, but you need to understand the culture, whether you're in China or you're in the Middle East. It's definitely a challenge because although I focus on selling private jets, whole, part, fractional, et cetera, it actually, the regulations are different in every country. The cultures are different. The way you ask a bank for help, or the way you can actually enter an airport with security, it just varies. So I would say the most important thing would be based on a culture experience, knowledge, in-depth know-all, whether it's their religion, their habits, their customs, what's proper. Holding a business card in Asia, you need to hold that with both hands, not just hand it off and never put it on the table. So I encourage every single one of my employees to understand the culture, whether they're calling us for a trip or even a meeting. I think it's vital.
Can I add something there? Because I think Miami is a really special place. I mean, I come from the UK, I've also worked 10 years in France, and I've worked as a consultant in a lot of places as well. But Miami is a really special place because there isn't really a dominant culture. There's a mix of cultures here. And it's a very welcoming place to people coming from elsewhere, and it's really something we should celebrate, I think. But one of the things I've noticed about it is because of that, at meetings, in business meetings, people spend an awful lot of time just talking at the beginning of it. And I found that really, really difficult to cope with at the beginning because it would go on for at least twice as long as I thought it would do. Everybody tried to establish some sort of link to everybody else in the room, and I just thought, oh, for goodness sake, let's get on with it. But I mean, that's characteristic of Miami that I now appreciate because it means listening to other people and making those links with people in a way I didn't appreciate at the beginning. So every even little place has its own special feel that it's important to learn about and respect.
I think that's a great point, and I was going to mention that we had talked out in the lobby a little bit about the challenges of Miami. So that's an interesting take on it. So let's talk a little bit about being women as leaders, because we all are. And I guess I want to ask the question, what obstacles do you think you've encountered because you're a woman? And tell us a story about how you've attacked or gotten past that obstacle. Maybe we'll go to Ginger on this one.
Well, it was interesting. I got the privilege to serve on the Florida Bankers Association Board of Directors. And I walked into the room, and there were literally over 40 men and one other woman and myself. And I was like, wow, this is quite, I didn't really expect that, because honestly, there's a ton of women in banking, yet there seems not to be as many at the C-suite, level. And I have to tell you, I felt a little out of place at first, and because guys kind of have their network and that good old boy, and they all knew each other. I was like the new kid on the block, and I tell you what I chose to do, and I think this kind of works in any type of situation where maybe there's more men, and I chose to really just try to take everything in. Just observe, took time to get to know them, and not really try to be like a man or tell stories, like they do, or exert myself, but not also shrink either. And it was interesting, over a period of time, they really did, I felt, accept me, and I felt welcomed, but I don't think it was something I could have forced. And I think that it could have been a real turnoff if I had tried to be one of the guys with, right off the bat. But I did. So I think we have to be careful how we do it. Of course, I'm a big Brene Brown fan, and for any of you who have heard her, The Power of Vulnerability, she talks about not shrinking and not puffing up, just showing up as your authentic self. So I think it's about just being our authentic self, who we are.
Anyone else want to take that one? Alex, you want to talk about being your authentic self and being a woman in leadership?
I think that was probably one of the best suggestions or tips I got very early on in my career by my boss about just be yourself, be true to yourself. You can't really emulate someone else's management style or leadership style. I have been in various industries in my career, so sometimes it's a matter of perspective. I started my career in the airline industry. I was then in banking twice, and in the airlines twice before coming into media. My first job, I was about 23 with an MBA at Eastern Airlines, and I walk in, and again, it's a good old boy network. I'm sitting around a conference room table. I'm the only one with a master's degree, by the way. But they look at me and they go, honey, can you go get us coffee? And I sit there and I go, I'm the most junior person. I should just go get them coffee. So I go get the coffee, and I'm so upset that when I get to the table, I spill the coffee all over the table, all over the men. And I look at them and I say, this is why I drink tea and I don't drink coffee. So maybe you should get your own coffee. They never asked me again. It was not intentional. I swear, it was not intentional. I spill stuff all over. That's why I really drink water most of the time. But I've been blessed because really in media at the Miami Herald, people always ask me, like, we are, I have a table full of amazing women that are all leaders in the company. Our two executive editors, our editorial pages editor, our CFO, the list goes on. They're there because they're the best in the business, and we go out of our way to make sure that we create opportunities to make sure that we retain, grow, and develop our talent, and that we have that diversity, because going to the diversity of Miami, for us to serve our customers, we have to represent the diversity of our community. And that means making sure that you engage and have people ready to promote into positions of leadership.
Can I add something on there? I have a tea story, actually. You had a coffee story. So I worked at the Science Museum in London, which is an old institution, and I was the only female assistant director. And when they had meetings in the afternoon, they would bring in a tea tray with a teapot and cups and saucers, and they would always give it to me to pour the tea. I mean, I didn't mind pouring the tea, it just seemed really stupid to me. So after I'd done it a couple of times, I thought, I know what I'll do next time. So next time I said, shall I be mum today? And I poured the tea. And then the time after that, I picked the youngest, sort of least stuffy person in the room and said, would you like to be mum today? And I passed the tray to him. And after that, they didn't ask me to pour the tea any longer. But the only other point I wanted to make out, because I've also been like the only English person, so it's a bit like being the only woman somewhere. You're the oddity. And there's pluses and minuses to it. So the pluses are people notice you and remember you. And also, if good things happen, studies have shown they attribute it to the odd person. So if it's really great, they attribute it to you. The downside is, if bad thing happens, it's your fault too.
So coffee and tea stories. I want to pursue, though, the idea of women being ready to be promoted, and women that we're bringing up, and women that we want to help rise in our organizations. So we had a good conversation about this earlier, because it's difficult for me, and I think for some of our panelists, to keep noticing that as hard as we work to help promote young women in our organizations, the leadership in general still tends to be male-dominated in public companies, in government, in a lot of places, at least in America. And I guess my question, and I'm gonna throw it open in general and see who wants to jump on it. I guess my question is, what are we doing and what can we do to help bring up the next generation of women leaders? Alex?
I think that, and I'm concerned because I look back and as we're trying to groom our next group of leaders, is what do we do to make sure that we continue to have the diversity as we go to the top level. I know many times people look and say some of the things that we do is because you can do them because you're a big company. But I would tell you that some of the things that we do to make sure that we grow that talent pool and retain our best and brightest are things that really don't cost money, but it means keeping things top of mind. It means that in our company we offer young mothers flexibility. You can work from home, flexible work schedules. It doesn't cost us money. It helps us retain some of our best talent. And I would actually proffer that we get some of the best work from people that you allow them that flexibility. It doesn't cost us a penny, but it's just keeping it top of mind. It's creating a network and ensuring that people, as they come through, have a resource. And people, we talked yesterday about shying away from the way of mentorship because people think that's a formal program, but it's really making sure that you help connect people to have a source that says, somebody already went through this experience. What do I do? You know, when they give me the pot of tea, I now know that I can ask her, what do I say, and can I borrow your accent? But it's that there's somebody that's gone before and not being able to show our vulnerability, that we've already had experiences and sharing them so that people know, you know what, I had a daycare crisis before and this is how I handled it. Or can we, trying to provide that support network, because sometimes I think we, in a world that's hyper-connected, we're also very isolated and we think we're dealing with things on our own.
How about in the airline industry?
I think there's this old adage that says something to the effect of women leaders take care and male leaders take charge. I do not like it one bit, but it's our fault. We need to speak up. We need to be heard. So when we're in a meeting, put the tea to the side and put the coffee to the side and ask them to hire a maid, you need to speak up. You need to show them your worth, your value, your knowledge. So I would say, you know, in the airline industry, very, very, very male-dominated. I have learned to take charge. I have learned when to speak. I have learned to pick my battles. I have learned to take the high road and, hey, I can cuss like a sailor. I can do what they do. But it's not about that. It's about being smart with what you say, what you bring to the table, and make sure that you get credit where it's due. Because I think the difference between us and the male species, for the most part, is that we give credit where it's due, and they still won't. So you need to speak up and speak loud and be clear to what you're gonna say. And I think that's one of the bigger differences, and you know, something that is changing at glacial speed, but it's changing. And, you know, we're, as females, popping up more and more every day. So keep doing what you're doing, but just make sure you speak up.
You know, I think the other opportunity we have is to actually get involved in leadership roles to help other women understand the challenges. And I think that TCI is a great example of us coming together and sharing experiences. And then there's one of the things I chose to do is the Florida Bankers Association. This will be our third year to have a Woman in Banking conference. So we've got a conference where we're actually bringing women together, and we've got skills, seminars and things to help them grow in their career. In Broward, we have the Leadership Broward has a program called Women Leading Broward. So that's only 2 years old. Then we've got the Extraordinary Women Leading Change movement in Broward. So I think there's those opportunities where we can come together and to learn from each other, support, you know, each other, and really try to lift each other, you know, up. And I think that's an awesome way to be supportive and hopefully get more of us continuing to start businesses and to lead businesses.
Interesting. And I'm going to go to Jillian on this related question, because I know that you're in the science business, and right now you're in the construction business, and you're in the dealing with government business. And as you reminded me earlier, you're also in the education business. So in those circles, are there a lot of women coming up? How are these women working together? I think of education as having a lot of women in it, but I don't think of science necessarily, but I think I might be wrong.
I definitely think there are a lot more women coming up, and there's some really good women, and there's some not so good women too, so it's not like every woman's brilliant at their job, right? I have to say I'm much more into really spotting good people, whether they're male or female, and helping them along the way. So I spend a lot of time trying to really spot people on the way up and then help them in any way I can, and also open doors to other opportunities elsewhere. So I think that's a very important component. Something that didn't come up is I really think that if there is a difference between men and women, it's that women have a lot of choices to make, and they do have choices around families that should perhaps not weigh as much on men as women, but I'm not sure that they currently do. And I do think the framework of legislation around childcare, holidays with pay, sick days, all those sorts of things have a fundamental impact on how well women are able to really take on major roles in that important middle term of your career, when you may also be managing small children and possibly elderly parents as well. So it's all about choices, and it can be challenging. There's a lot of opportunities out there. I mean, if you look at the numbers of women in engineering, for example, in the US, they're a lot lower than lots of other places in the world, and that's a real shame. So I think there's an attitude, there's definitely more education needed. I think the doors are open, we just have to push them and get in there, so it's all about making choices and getting on with it.
Interesting. So Alex brought up a point when we were about this very topic when we were talking yesterday about the difference between the support systems that were available when we were coming up, perhaps, that are different now, and that to some extent the women that could have opportunity now are making different choices because of those support systems. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure. I had recently read an article and saying we've provided our daughters the ability to have choices. I have a 30-year-old daughter. I think back at 30, I had already had her. My mother was younger, and my mother, while I was working or traveling, would take care of my daughter. If my daughter had a child today, I'm working and I'm not ready to go be a nanny. I would love my grandkids, so it's a reality that the support network that this next generation is going to have might be a little bit different just because of ages and the changes in the choices that we now have open to make. And again, as leaders in our organization, what kind of flexibility or opportunities do we provide? We don't offer daycare, but we leased out space to a daycare center in our building. So if you do have a child, male or female, you can drop off your baby, pick them up, and they're right on site. But I do look at this and I tell my daughter, you know, I don't know what you're going to do because I'm not ready to take care of it.
Is that different in other countries?
Well, I never had any help from my mum, so I mean, I've just had to kind of sort myself out, and my husband traveled a lot, so I didn't travel a lot when my kids were young. But in other countries, there is much more pre-K, publicly funded support available. Quite a lot of scheme places where you can, at public cost, leave your child from early in the morning till in the evening time. So I think there's more support, there's more time off when a child's born. So in Europe, there's a lot more support for families. There's parental leave. And I just think it makes it easier for women to be able to really keep going at a good level in their career rather than having to take a kind of pause and then get back in action. But it is all about choices, and it's the choices within the community that you're in, but there's nothing to stop us all really lobbying for change. And I don't see much of a coherent voice out there for really pushing for better conditions at a federal level, I guess. I'm not a political expert and I don't have a vote, so I really shouldn't be saying this at all.
Well, rather than going further into politics, let's talk a little bit about strengths. So, not so much the strengths that women have specifically, but the strengths that each of you think you have that have given you leadership opportunities and that you use as a leader. So I guess I'll start with you, Cookie. What kind of strengths do you think you bring to your role that have enabled you to sit at that table and, you know, push things aside and take charge? What are those strengths that you bring to this?
I think if you would ask my employees or the folks that work with me, I think the first thing that comes to mind would be my commitment. Aviation is 24/7, especially on the holidays, especially on the weekends. So I think my level of commitment is something that that shows being available to everyone 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. My poor husband can attest to my phone ringing at 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in the morning, and it doesn't upset me. It's part of the business. So commitment is definitely one of my strengths. I love helping. I love mentoring, and I definitely like making customers happy. That would be one. I think another one would be honesty. I'm not a politician. I would fail miserably because I speak the truth. Whether you like it or not, you get the truth from me. And I think that at first, that scares people a little bit. They find me intimidating when they work for me. And I always think, why? I'm so nice. But I expect 200% from you. And I let you know that from the moment I interview you, because I am very keen on looking for great employees that are going to give me 200%. So I'm honest, for better or for worse. And I think, lastly, I would say definitely, I don't know. I think there's just so many different, I guess it depends on the day of who you see me be, you know, what's going on. But I would just say definitely my passion. I would say the majority of my customers, when, you know, once I get to meet them, or once, you know, I travel the world and get to meet people face to face, they understand the passion that I have for aviation, for safety, for caring out about people beyond, you know, signing a contract. I mean, I'll feed you to my competitor if it makes sense. But it's exactly what it is. It has to make sense for the customer. And it's not always about me or my company. So I would say passion would be something that drives my success.
Ginger, tell us about your strengths.
Well, you know, I know some of you have heard of Strength Finders, and I know, Janet, that's something that you've actually used in your firm, and it's something that I highly recommend you all to do this if you haven't taken it. And one of the things in Strength Finders, it's a strength called woo. And you kind of go, what is woo? But it is one of my strengths, and it is just kind of that ability to, influence and probably, inspire others to follow, that vision. And the thing I really think as women, and I'm probably glad you're asking this, even though it's kind of hard sometimes to talk about our strengths because we're always worried about being so humble, and we don't want to step into our greatness. We don't want somebody to think, I'm conceited, or I think I'm so much better. But yet, what we find in Strength Finders is if we understand our strengths and we use our strengths in our job, and our job fits what our strengths are, we're gonna be a lot more successful. And so, I am working personally on just going ahead and owning, yes, the fact that that is one of my strengths. And as a CEO of a bank, it's a great opportunity, both with my customers, prospects, and employees to use that.
I think that's a great strength. And when I first saw it, I've just started working with StrengthsFinder, and when I first saw it, I didn't know what it meant, but it does mean a lot about what Ginger is about, which is very interesting. Alex, what would you say your strengths are that have gotten you here?
It's funny because we did go through Strengths Finders. Like Ginger, woo is a top one. I think that my folks would tell you that what I really love to do is connect people. And I'm all about transparency. And that's part of that not only communicating, but what I'm communicating is trying to make sure that everybody in the organization is aligned and understands and can connect the dots about why we're doing what we're doing and how they play into it and their piece of it. I think one of the things that I do is I do not hide in my office. If I am in the building, I'm going to walk through that entire building and talk to everybody every day and walk through randomly. When you sit and hide in your office, people are coming to you, but they're going to tell you specifically what they're coming to tell you. When you walk around, you find out all sorts of interesting little tidbits. They may not be large, but an accumulation of a lot of small little things add up to big things that can influence and drive a company. And if you can connect it all, it can be extremely powerful. And that's just something that it's just innate in me. I have to be out there talking, whether it's a customer or to the employees, and it's amazing what you'll hear and what people will do when you're talking to them on a regular basis.
Jillian, strengths.
I'm kind of at two levels. So I think one is able to keep my eye on where it is we're trying to go and really not let myself get distracted or you can so easily get involved in kind of little discussions going on around the back and all the rest. So just trying to keep going. So like you, I think honesty, being straightforward and going somewhere is very important. I really like Alex's idea of management by walking around. I think that's very important. I personally think respect for everybody that works for you is really important, and therefore treating everybody with care is something that I value and that I really try to play out in my life because I think that's an important component. So it's at the both levels, if you like. I think you have to be willing to make tough decisions, and I really don't mind making tough decisions. And I know people like kind of thing. I just think get on with it, make the decision, move forward. But at the same time, be aware that every time you're making decisions, there are implications of that, and sometimes you have to really take care of everything.
So one of the questions that we asked about obstacles brought up a really interesting answer, because many people who took the survey said that one of the obstacles to succeeding as a women leader in Florida, which I think is the way the question was phrased, was that women have mentors who provide support, men have sponsors who offer opportunities. So I guess I'd like to ask the panel to tell us, anyone who has had either a mentor or a sponsor that has really influenced your career and taken you further in what you were able to do.
I've never ever had an official mentor, right? So I kind of come at this slightly oddly. But I can say that I've often picked somebody in an organization whom I've asked if they would give me advice. So particularly when I was working in France, where I really didn't know that much about what was going on, I selected a guy who was about 2 levels or 3 levels ahead of me, who seemed to me to be somebody who with a lot of good sense, and asked him if he'd give me advice, and saw him on a regular basis. And he really helped me steer through a lot of complicated things that otherwise I would have run into walls and not got anywhere. So I think it's more like being active about selecting somebody that you think can help you and just asking them. And I found that also in like when you're running something and you have a board, you know, on that board, there are some people that are going to be super, super helpful and that you can really run ideas past them. So it's not quite like mentoring, but I definitely think finding somebody in that next level or 2 levels up that you can try things with and explore things and bounce ideas off, I've always found that extremely helpful.
Who else?
I would say I like that term sponsor. Early in my career when I was at Southeast Bank, there was a woman there that was there. We never really became friends at the time, but we stayed in touch, and many of you will know her. She's a dear friend now, Robin Ryder. And through the years, Robin would just call me and say, I'm going to put your name to be on this board. And I learned early on not to question her, and I would just, yes, Robin, I'll sit on this board. I trusted her in that she had a different view of opportunities and connections that all resulted in broadening my perspective, my connections. I'm at the Miami Herald today because she brought me in, because she had seen me in action through some of those nonprofit boards. So I think it's to looking outside of your network. It's very easy. Sometimes we limit ourselves to the people we know, but single out somebody. But I also ask people, because I get called all the time, will you mentor me or whatever? What are you, get really specific, what are you looking for? I don't mind doing it, but just be really specific. What do you want? Are you looking for a connection? Do you want answers about something specific? Know what you want and don't be afraid to ask for it. And I think we'll be open to sharing, but know what you want.
Yeah, I think know what you want is very important, because when people say, well, will you come talk with me and help me? I like that people ask for help, but what do you need help with? Yeah. Anyone else? Okay. So there's one other question that I think that Ginger has a great answer for. And I think it's important to ask about this because we're all leaders, and we all have a very strong business focus. But I think a lot of people in the room, including our panelists, also have things that are important to them in the world and that they're passionate about and that drive them to do things that some of us might think are crazy. And some of us might think are a real demonstration of passionate leadership. And I'd like Ginger to talk to us about her real demonstration of passionate leadership quite recently.
Okay, Janet. I just got finished climbing Mount Kilimanjaro. And I did it for a cause. And that's what I think, that's definitely what matters. Kilimanjaro is the highest freestanding mountain in the world. The summit is 19,341 feet. There's half as much oxygen there at the top that there is here. And I was privileged to climb with 19 other men and women to raise funds and awareness against human trafficking. That's why we were there. And yes. And so I think the thing that we have as women leaders and business owners and employees, and the thing, I think that women really do, I think women really do a good job of like making things happen and getting things, done. And through this, it was called the WASI Foundation Freedom Climb. So WASI Foundation is actually a South Florida, foundation. We had 6 climbers from South Florida. And the group of 20 of us, we raised over $700,000, with $300,000 coming from the South Florida, community. And And one of the things that I was able to do because of my being blessed to have a platform is to really reach out to my sphere of influence within the business community and ask other people to join me in doing something about this cause. And of course, even as women, Florida is number 3 in the nation for human trafficking. South Florida is number 1 with the number of calls of the hotline. There's 30 million women enslaved. And as a woman, I really feel a responsibility to do something about this. And as a mother, I have a daughter. And so I think that I really, whatever your cause is, whatever you're passionate about, we can make a difference in social issues. And you know what? Here's what I think about. It wasn't that long ago, ladies, that we couldn't vote. It wasn't that long ago that slavery was actually legal in this country. And so when I think about 30,000 women enslaved globally, it's overwhelming, but we've got to start somewhere. And I'm going to tell you, when on the summit, you leave at 11:30 at night with headlamps, and it took us 8 hours to get to the top of the summit, and then of course it takes even 4 hours to get back down. And here's what I was saying in my mind, because look, it would be very easy to quit. But because I had a cause, because I had people supporting me, it was one step, one child, one woman, one life. And that is what got me up to the top and back down. And I really do believe that we can do something, about this social issue. So in closing, and thanks for giving me the opportunity to share, what I'm always saying is, like, whatever you care about, whatever bothers you, as a business person, as a woman leader, get out there and do something, about it, and we can make it. We can see change.
Okay, so I think it's time for me to thank our panel. Thank you all so much for sharing stories about your leadership journey, and to bring Doris back and Jane. That's what it says on my schedule, to take us to the next portion of the program. Thanks to the panel again, please.
Thank you guys very much.
Let's wait 1 second.